Okay guys, in this video we've got the Traxxas Sledge. You know, this has been the rave of the internet of late, and these just came on the market today. I put my pre-order in, the guys at the hobby store hung on to one for me, and I've got this on the bench. Now the cool thing is I've seen this one, they had it on the bench, and it's the only one they had in stock. So I got it, and they were nice enough to put it back in the box exactly the way it was. So in this video, we're gonna get this out of the box. We're gonna do a full unboxing on this thing. We're gonna take it out and run it to see if it's everything they think it is. And at the end, we're gonna go over our review and the ratings. Check this out. Okay guys, let's get this out of the box. Oh, got the radio. Oh, figures. Always. I get that every time. Go. And the packet. Sweet. Excellent. Have a look at that. That's pretty cool. Awesome. Let's get the body off and see what's inside. But before we do, let's see what came in the box. And this is a pretty simple looking kit here. First off, we got the TQI radio, and this is pretty much standard for most of the new Traxxas stuff that comes out. It's a decent radio, but I understand this one already has the link connector in the back, which means we'll have to download the app and see what all is entailed with that. That's pretty cool. And it has a basic kit here. It's got a foam block here, I assume for the battery set, so you can adjust that. It's got a wheel wrench, a couple of Allen wrenches, just pretty rudimentary stuff, and the manual. And that's pretty much all that comes with it. Now let's get down inside. Now the way I understand it, this body comes off in a very unique way, and it's right in the back here. There's two tabs on the inside, and you have to squeeze those a little and it just lifts. That's pretty slick. But as opposed to, say, the X-Max and the Max, this one you just push forward and it slides right off. And that's pretty cool. Let's get this out of the way here. Usually when it's stuck down, it's kind of cool, but that was just a bag, but that's still pretty neat. So these little tabs right in here, these are just pinch tabs, and they just grab onto the framework in there and they hold the body on. But this has a tongue in the front, so it hooks. So that means it comes through this section like so, back and down, and the body's on. There are no hood pins or anything of that nature, but since it hooks going backwards, any impact to the front won't dislodge the body the way it does on the Max and the X-Max. If you've seen any of the videos with the X-Max, you've seen the body go tumbling and things like that. This one should not suffer from that. And once you get the bag out of the way, it comes off just that easy. So access to the batteries and the internals is just that simple. Okay, so the initial look looks pretty promising, and as much as I want this to be the coolest thing ever, and they did a good job. They had 2 years since the Creightons came out, the ones I'm aware of, and they had 2 years to build something similar, and this really is in the same category as the Creightton. However, they did do some really cool stuff. In the top here, this is a T-bar. That's way stronger than a round tube through here because they can bend in any direction. These are really solid. That's really cool. The battery tray is pretty interesting in the fact that they want you to stack the batteries vertically. I'm not sure what I think of that because I've had batteries deform when they land on their edge, so I'm not sure whether I'm a fan of that or not. It'll be interesting to see how that works out. But I did notice one thing that really I'm kind of worried about actually, and what it comes down to is if you look down in this area, you'll see that this motor and the pinion are separate from the center differential. They only connect at the chassis. And if those are good and solid and everything's tight, then everything's going to be just fine. However, things flex. The motor has weight, it has mass, it can move. And I know they have this really cool big motor mount right here. And this is a pretty substantial unit, but it's not connected any way I can see. This is separate from the differential. And the problem being, if you get any flex, that's going to move a little. And when it moves, those gears are going to go away. That's just how that works. Those have to keep a certain mesh to work. I really wish they would have put some sort of solid connector, and I hate to use another brand as an idea for this, but the way Arrma does things, it's all one piece. And what that means is everything connects to the same plate so that once you set it and lock it down, it can't separate. The motor can flex a little bit, but it still keeps that same spacing. With this, on the other hand, with this separate from this item here, there is the potential for the motor to flex a little or the chassis to flex a little bit, and it could cost you your gears. And I have to be honest, I've seen some of the channels out there that have been testing these things, and I've seen center differentials go away, at least in the gearing. So that's one of those things that I'm not sure about. I will really be interested to test this, push it, and see what it takes to actually get that to fail. We're not here to break these on purpose, but if it doesn't hold up, you're going to know about it. Also, I am a fan of the speed control that's in there. That's the same one that's in the UDR, and that one's been pretty bulletproof for the channel. It's held up really well. It's done better than the X-Max and the Max. This one has held up really well. I'm interested to see what the add-ons are for the radio as far as what the app's going to provide, what we can do with that. The servo here, it's supposed to be a good one, and it does have a metal servo horn, and that's a good thing as well. But we won't know the speed of the vehicle until we actually slap a battery in it and see what it can do. So there you go, guys. That's the car out of the box. There's only one thing left to do. Let's take it out and test it. Check this out.
I'm saying things I don't believe. The panic's rising.
Okay guys, here we go. We got the Traxxas Sledge out and we're gonna run in this area here. This is our play area today. It looks pretty cool. Should be a lot of fun. The thing is, we got about 150 dirt bikes out here today, so there's gonna be a lot of weirdness going on. Hopefully the sound is okay. Still, this thing is gonna be a lot of fun. I can feel it. It looks pretty well built, but it may have some issues. Let's find out. Check this out.
What you think about when you're born into a fire? Let them burn it out. Sell them to the richest buyer. They wanna let the world decay. They tell us lies and fade away, fade away. We feel betrayed. We were raised to lose the race.
Okay, so there you go. That's the running footage for the Traxxas Sledge. Now, this is a really cool vehicle, and I enjoyed testing this one. We took it out, and we were not at all nice to it, and that's intentional because we want to know what these things will put up with. You know, we've got quite a few pros and cons, and this is probably going to take just a little bit to get through, but at the end, you'll get our 4 questions. Is it fun? Is it durable? Is it worth the money? And where does it stack up in our collection? Let's get started. Okay, so in the interest of fairness, let's go down the list first. And I have my list right here next to me, just so I can get things lined up the way they need to be. This car right here, it's basically Traxxas's version of a Creighton, and they got a lot of things right. I'm just going to go through the list for you so you can see what they are, and then we'll talk about it here in a minute. The design of it is really tough. This machine right here, the arms, nothing failed as far as the regular build of the car goes. It held up really well, and it took a lot of crashes and tumbles, and it took them at speed, and we ran it at both 4S and 6S, and it held up nicely. The body attachment, this piece right here, and I really am a fan of this. I think they got this spot on with this one. Just pull out, and it pops right up, and just fish it off the front. Just that easy. It is really slick, and it didn't come off one time, and we really gave her hell. This tongue in the front is long enough to where it really holds on good, and these never detached one time. So that all by itself is really cool. I'm really impressed with that. Next up is the design of this body, and you know, it's very much the same as a lot of the cars out there, but that one has some styling and detail. But there's one thing that needs to be looked at. Right here in the front, we had to trim this out. Now there's a lot of channels that have had this cave in and hook on the front nub where the bumper is. It's a small little thing, but it hooks right here. All we had to do was trim that out, and we did it to start with. And the front of the body got no damage, and it didn't cave it in because this cleared the bumper. Made a huge difference for that. So I recommend doing that straight out of the box because it's really a good looking deal with it on there that way, and I'll show you in a little bit. But it does save you a lot of damage. Next up is the battery tray. And you know, I didn't know what I was going to think of this, to be honest with you. This is pretty cool. It's got the same Traxxas design as far as, and you're in it, and you're back in with your battery. That is slick as hell. I really don't like having to use the Velcro. It works well, and it's really pliable, so you can get a lot of different batteries in it. This is kind of limited for space. but it is big enough to get most of what you want to run in it. We had the 4S 6000s in it, and we ran a 6S 4000 in it, and there was room for a bit more. So that was kind of neat. It does work really well, and these two pin slots right here where you can put the hood pins in, right here and right here, it never once popped open with those pins in there. So that, just that little locking mechanism was really slick, and I liked that a lot. Next up, the chassis braces. Now it's got some plastic chassis braces and that solid T-bar that goes across the top, and everything held up beautifully. The chassis is still straight even with all the damage we tried to throw at it. That part held up really good. Next up, the shock absorbers. They're hefty. They didn't have any damage on them. They held up just perfectly. I think I would definitely go with a little heavier oil, especially in the back. But for what came out of the factory, it worked pretty good. The speed control. Now, this is interesting. The speed control in this thing, and that's right here, that's the speed control out of the UDR. And we've had absolutely no failings in the speed control for the UDR running 6S and 4S over and over. And this one holds up good. The only problem that I have with this one is you push the button to turn it on, but you have to unplug the battery to turn it off. There's no off switch, so you can't get in there and just switch it off. You have to unplug it, which can get a little awkward at times. Right behind that, though, is the 2000 kV motor, and that thing is a beast. It really does a great job. It's overpowered as it comes out of the box. You put 6S in it, and you have to feather the trigger, or you're on your ass end all the time. It really does stand up easily. It's really controllable at 4S. It just doesn't have that crispy speed that you get out of the 6S. And if you pedal your throttle, it's still controllable at 6S, but you know how it goes. You get a little bit of tension in there, you overgrab the throttle, and things go sideways pretty fast. Also, talking about the power plant and all of that stuff, the gyro that's in that thing, if you get it in the air, and that happens with a lot of these. I have it with a lot of the other ones. And this one caught me by surprise because I wasn't really ready for it. And you can turn it down right on the radio, and that is the multifunction knob right here. This knob here, that one. Dial that down and the gyro is turned off. Crank it all the way up and the gyro's maxed. That's just pretty simple, right? But you forget that you have it turned on, and you hit something that gives you really good air, and then the gyro doesn't know what to do. And it starts waggling the front wheels around, and the car wiggles in the air, and then it comes down on its side, or it comes down all kinds of strange. When you get those in the air, if you're going to jump it at all, just turn the gyro off, and it'll jump nice and true most of the time, because it won't have that articulation in the front end on the tires and wheels, and it'll keep you more under control. Any movement that's on those tires is up to you at that point, and that will test your driving ability in the air, but it also takes that weird anomaly out of there. It makes it a lot easier to do. Okay, so let's get on to the differentials. This thing has really brutal differentials in it, and they're really big toothed on there, and they are tough. We did pull the center differential out and have a look at this. We had to break it down and have a look inside because things did move around, and the thing is, we're going to get right into the cons, and I don't want to do that. The differential didn't have enough fluid in there. It was really stiff, but it would get past that, and then it would freewheel because they didn't quite have enough material in there, so we had to go ahead and fill it the rest of the way up so it would do what it's supposed to. They got fluid in there, and I don't know if you could call it fluid. It looked more like gum down in there, because that's really stiff what they have in. We went ahead and filled it up with 500K, and now it's pretty tight, but there is some give in there, so it's not locked all the way down. One other thing that I really like here are these plastic tie rods. I think those are awesome. They bend and flex. You know, when you have those metal ones, those can bend and they can break off because they don't take that bending and flexing the way these do. Now, granted, you cannot adjust these. On the car themselves, there's a point A and a point B. There are a couple of little spots here where you can move it a little bit, but at the end of the day, guys, you're really not going to do much adjusting on them. Those are fixed points. The thing is, they got them in the right place. So for handling and control, these things really are fixed in a good position, and they're really durable. So I'm impressed with those. I really think those are cool. The last thing on the pros side that I could come up with is I love the wing design. I just think that wing design is really cool. I had one small failing in it. this screw on the left side, looking at it from the back here, pulled through the plastic. So that little ribbon they have on top that's supposed to hold it all together, that's just plastic, and the screw can pull right through it. Now, granted, I did put into it really hard when I hit the ground, and something had to give, and that makes perfect sense. But I'm thinking of making a carbon fiber one to replace that, so at least it will hold. This is a really flexible wing. This isn't one of those stiff ones. This one's super givey, which means it'll take all kinds of impact with no damage. And we tested that, and it held up just fine. Okay, with that behind us, let's get into the cons. And you know, there's more pros than cons on this car, but some of the cons are exceptional. And one of the things I want to start with is this, and this is the radio system. And I don't dislike this system. What I dislike is, in order to get that link module that gives you more control in your phone, you have to pay more to get it. Other than that, it's pretty rudimentary on what it is, but it feels awesome in the hand. Everything works really good. It's a great radio. But I hate the way they cheap out on these things and make you buy something else. So in my opinion, that is definitely against the car, and they do it to a lot of them. My understanding is I just got the Ultimate Slash. That's on the bench behind me, and that has it in the radio to start with. We'll find out when we get it unboxed. Secondly, on the con side, the steering system here is suffering from a lot of the same things that the Creightons did early on. And what that means is this stuff in here begins to bind in the rack system, and it gets to where it's really stiff, and it didn't take much. I think their tolerances might be a little close in there. We didn't run it in water, we didn't get in mud, it was just dust. You saw the video, we didn't run it anywhere else but what you've seen, and this started to act up right away. So I got one battery in, and the steering started to creak and make noises. And when it was sitting still, it wouldn't turn the wheels all the way, and the Creightons suffered from that too. So that's kind of a common thing for this kind of setup, but I think they could have loosened up the tolerances just a bit to get a little more free area in there so it didn't bind up on the dust. That's really unfortunate when it comes to that kind of thing. So, you know, as far as the steering stuff goes, that also brings me right into the servo. Now, this servo, and I suppose I should have hung on to that, check this out. This servo is, I don't know, I haven't tore into it to see, but this servo will not move. The servo won't move, but if you plug it in, it does move things, but it's kind of skittish about how it does it. And I think I might have got a bad one there. Like I say, it's a really tough servo, but it is having issues, and it makes it a little harder to steer. I think and at one point when we were running the third battery through it, it would no longer turn right. There was nothing binding the system. It just wouldn't go right, turn left, and then all of a sudden it decided to turn right again. So I think the servo is defective in that one. I did order a couple of 35Ks to replace that with one of those to get just a little more power and something I know I can depend on. This is something that I've seen on the other channels, and I was wondering if I was going to run into it. And I did. And what it is all of these bolts that go into the bulkheads here, they tie into the shock towers, they hook into these rods here, and all the steering ones, all the ones in the back, and the ones to the motor up here, they all loosen up. They come loose. And I know they put nylocks on that stuff, and that's the locking nut on the back, and I think they're just depending on the nylocks to do the job, and they're not. Guys, you're going to have to get some Loctite on those because they loosen up regularly. They started coming loose on the first battery. It took to the third battery for the motor to loosen up, and I heard the gearing change. It was just a simple run. I had a small tumble. It wasn't one of the big ones. It was running fine just before that. And the weird thing is I had the same problem pop up with the UDR when I was running that. So the motor offset a little bit. Now the problem is, and I was afraid this was going to be the case, they're not attached. Down inside here, the motor is separate all by itself, and it is sitting just attached to the chassis. The center differential doesn't connect to it. It's hooked to the chassis too, and things can move. Now they use those flat bolts, and the flat bolts are supposed to pinch the aluminum and hold the motor mount in place. The problem is those loosen a little bit, out everything comes. It's not as solid as having a solid plate that hooks both items together. I haven't had that failing in an ARMA car yet. And yet on the third battery with this one, I heard the gearing change, and if I would have kept going, I would have destroyed that center differential just like that, because it shifted that much. When I got it back to the house, all of those bolts were loose. I pulled them out, had a look, there's Loctite on them, but not very much, guys. I mean, you can see it in the threads, but when they crank it in, and I think it's when they pre-put it on and let it dry and then they run the screws in later, I think that's what that is. You really need to put a little bit on wet. I wouldn't overdo it because you do want to be able to get them out, but I would definitely get some more Loctite on those and make sure you use the removable stuff. That area shouldn't get all that hot, and crank them down good once you get it set. I don't know if I'm a fan of that little block that's back here. And what it is this little block on the back side of the motor, and it's just a little piece, and what it is, it's a spacer block. And when you put a different pinion in there, you switch the spacer block, it changes the offset, so you just push the motor up against it. The problem is, it's a small block, and the motor's this big. So you can actually twist the motor over that block and change the gearing. If you think you can just slide it to the block and crank it down, you can get you somewhere in the ballpark, but just by twisting it, I took that gearing and made it super tight or loose around that block. And I would rather not have that block in there, set my gearing the way I want to, and crank it down so it would hold, as opposed to using that block, because I understand if you're new to the hobby and you need something to help you understand your spacing, that's fine. But for the more advanced users of these machines, that's something you can set yourself. You know exactly what you want for your gear spacing, and you can set that up. And if you set it up yourself, you can get the closer tolerance, so if it does move a little bit, it doesn't destroy the differential. So that's a real thing. Beside that, let's talk about the tires and wheels. Now, these are Sledgehammers, and they're cool looking. The design is outstanding right off the bat, and it's pretty cool, but right away these loaded up with dirt. Okay, there's 2 holes on the inside. It ran really good for a battery, and then it loaded up with dirt, and these got way out of balance. And they got way out of balance. They were terrible. And this one, let's see if I can find it here. This one broke. It's broken right down in there. And I'll get you a close-up picture of that. But this wheel shattered right down in here, so it split open. What I wound up doing to deal with the out of balance, and once you get that dirt into the foam that's on the inside, it's really hard to get out. But what I did was I went ahead and vented the outsides, and it trued it up some. But the 2 that were on the front were still way out of balance. I really hate when they make you have these holes on the inside, because anything that rotates inside there can go through those holes and load the foam, and that's a weight that they don't count on. And it always goes through in 2 locations. It goes through the first hole, and then opposite it there's a second hole, which means you're going to load here and here. It doesn't load the tire evenly. It fills the foam in 2 spots, and you can tell when these things start to shake and shimmy that foam's getting loaded up with debris. So I went ahead and vented the outside. Some of the material was able to get out, but not all of it. So that was a problem there. Not a real fan of that. I did switch the tires around just to see what would happen, and I went ahead and stuck some Creighton tires on there, and it definitely brings it in some, but Traxxas cheats, and here's what I mean by that. On the inside here, this little nub that goes on the hub is narrower. It doesn't stick in as far, so if you bolt an ARMA wheel onto this car, this ring on the ARMA wheel will pin up against the bearing, and it turns really hard. So if you put like regular Creighton tires on it from the 6S vehicle, you're going to burn it up right away, because the resistance of that, you'd have to shave that ring down a little bit to give you some clearance so you could get those on. But the offset on these means when you put the Creighton ones on it, it's not as wide. So it's kind of a toss-up. You got to wait for them to come out with an aftermarket for this, and I hope they do really soon. I'm not a fan of what they make you do for the wrench and stuff. It's still 17 millimeters, but it's keyed. So you have to use that tool they give you, and it still has that same stuff here. You can grind this out and get these on other vehicles, get just a little more width if you like. But I'm not overly impressed with these. They are kind of heavy. They do cause the car to stand up right away when you pull the throttle. So there's kind of a lot of mass in there when you think about it. All right, with all of that behind us, I want to touch on one thing here, and I like the battery box design. We talked about that already, but it's not really, they want you to stack their batteries in it, but that's not necessarily how that works, because I like to run these. These are standard 4-cell packs, and I like to run these, which is a 6-cell. This is 6,000 milliamps in the 4-cell pack, and this is 4,000 milliamps in the 6-cell pack. And so it doesn't look anything like the batteries that they use, but that doesn't mean you can't run them. And what I mean by that is, if you open this up and you turn this back some, this right here is an adapter block, and this is a Traxxas unit. This adapter block came out of the Max. And what's cool is with this thing, watch this, it goes right on here, just like so. Now it's got the adapter block, and this is a foam block out of the X-Max. Okay, so with the 4-cell pack, this will fit right in here now. Get the wires out of the way. So this will sit right in there now, and it sits perfectly, right? So without that adapter block in there, it's too loose. So you just fold this underneath like so, and this will snap right in. And take a look at this now. That's a 6,000 milliamp 4S pack in there, and it fits perfectly. It goes right in. It's laying flat the way I like them. So I want to run my own batteries. I don't want to have to buy a bunch of other batteries to run these things. So the 4S pack fits right in there. Now, pop this off, and the block comes right out. And I'm pretty sure you can find the part number for that and just order one of these things, because it's huge when you're running flatter batteries. And it did come with a foam bar in the packet. So if you have a smaller one, like a 3S, I don't think this runs on 3S, but if you have a smaller battery, like less milliamp hours, you can put that foam block on here and it should take up the extra space. So that would sit like so. This is a taller pack now. Okay, so that means when you put this in there, it sits like so. And if I remember correctly, I have to put it in this way. Yes. And this block sits along the front. So you just tuck it in along the front there, like this. Now I've got a foam block in the front and a foam block in the back. This fishes under. Here we go. And now it's got a 6S pack in it, just like that. And it's got a 4,000 milliamp 6S pack, which keeps the weight down. It fits perfectly in there, and it's good and tight. So that's how you get your regular batteries to fit, depending on the size, of course, and the width and the girth of the battery. That does matter, but these ones seem to fit, and these are standard size. So it's not like it's way out of pocket or anything. These things go right in. And this is an HRB 4,000 milliamp 6S. This is a Z battery 6,000 milliamp 4S. Both of them go right in there, and all the runs you saw us do were on that particular deal. And I was using just an adapter to jump from Traxxas over to the EC5 connectors, because I wasn't sure whether I wanted to cut this connector off yet. So I wanted to use this one to see if the car would warrant that. And since I'm only going to run single batteries in here, I'll probably snip this works off right here and just put a single EC5 on it, and then this is good to go. It's time to get down to our 4 questions. And if you watch the channel, you know what they are. Is it fun? Is it durable? Is it worth the money? And where does it stack up in our collection? So let's get on with it. Question 1, is it fun? Hell yes, this thing's fun. It's really stable, it runs out really nice, and it's really strong. It's quick, and on 4S, it's really manageable. On 6S, you can get as off the chain as you want, and it'll do backflips for days. On 4S, when we hit the main ramp, I couldn't quite get it to pull all the way over in a backflip, but just catching some of that short stuff, the little dirt mounds and stuff, I was getting backflips off those pretty regular. And the quick, fast, low budget ones, that was all done on 6S, and it does pretty much everything you want it to. So as far as the fun rating goes, is this thing fun? It certainly is, but you still have that radio. They still couldn't adjust the brakes on it. You have to get in there and mess with the speed control, and I'm not a fan of doing it that way. I like to have it right on the deal. So it took a little fun out of it when you get on the brakes and it noses over and it just slides for days. That's bad, but you know, these skid plates and all that stuff did a good job of protecting the body. So as far as is it fun, I'm going to give that 8 out of 10 for fun. And question number 2, durability. Is this thing durable? Hell yeah, it's durable. I mean, as much running as I did and as hard as I was on this car, I wasn't able to break any of the structure. The arms held up, the chassis held up, the chassis braces did good. Functionally, the exterior of this car is rock solid. They did a great job on it. However, the parts do come loose. The motor can self-destruct when it moves away from the pinion, and the pinion moves away from the spur gear, and it can destroy that center diff. So the durability on the inside, the design of that particular deal, it takes away some from that, because yes, the car itself holds up, but if you can't keep it running, you're gonna have issues. And we have the servo failure. There's just too many things in there for it to be considered fully durable. So for that, we're gonna give it 8 out of 10 for durability. And question number 3, is this thing worth the money? That's an interesting question, because this car rolled out at $800. That's a lot for an 8 scale basher that basically doesn't have too much to offer over one of these, and those are a lot cheaper. Even with the arm upgrades and the basic upgrades we've done to those, they still come in under the cost of one of those. And once you get the upgrades on them, they don't really suffer the failings that these have. Yes, this does suffer from the same steering issue, but that can be changed out. I'm sure this one can be dealt with as well. But that's a lot of money to throw at that, guys. And if you don't have that kind of money, this is an exorbitant buy. It really is. At $800, it's staggering how much this thing costs. This should be, in my opinion, this should roll in about $650, and that would be fair to the market. But they roll it out with that huge price tag, and it's really kind of a killer when it's not everything they crack it up to be. You know, the design inside of it, the servo that they used, the stuff that I'm having issues with. And keep in mind, what other people have on their channels and what you get in real life, that's their business. I can only tell you what I've done with this one and what I've suffered. And I'll tell you, if I was just out to get a car to go bash for funsies, I don't know that I would get this one. If you're a die-hard Traxxas fan, and I know you guys are out there, Traxxas is fun to play with and they get a lot of things right. Look up here. They get a lot of things right, but they don't get everything right. And this is version 1 of this car. Who knows how long it'll be before they do upgrades to fix some of the problems, especially that motor mount issue. For me, that is a real deal breaker. So if you're talking about, is this thing worth the money? You know, I really can't say whether it is or it isn't. If you have the money and Traxxas turns you on, then I suppose it's worth the money. But if you're looking for that all-out bash and you're on a bit of a budget, you can get started with an RTR from the ARMA end of things a lot cheaper with low-budget upgrades that don't cost all that much to get it up and running. Yes, the arms are super durable. Everything holds up really good. It's just a beautiful car in its design, but they just fell short on a couple of things. And for me, that's a real deal breaker. So since it is the way it is, I'm only going to give this one 6 out of 10 for value, because honestly, guys, I really think that's right. And finally, question number 4. Where does this stack up in our collection? And you know, we've got a pretty good collection here, and we've got a lot of the high-end stuff. And the cool thing is that gives me a certain perspective on these kind of things. Does this belong on the rack with the other ones? I think it does. Does it make the top 10? Now, we have 8 scales, we have 5th scales, we have, you know, all ranges of cars, and the top 10 isn't scale specific. The whole thing is, if I had to take 10 cars and we're going to go out and bash for a weekend, these are the 10 cars I would take. And this one, I don't know, but I'll tell you what I am going to do. I am going to put it in the top 10, guys. This one is going to take the 10th spot right behind the UDR in our collection. So rolling in at number 10, the Traxxas Sledge. So hey, if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. It's awesome when you do. And don't forget that notification bell to stay informed of upcoming videos like this one. You know, here at the channel, we really enjoy doing this kind of thing, getting the new technology and seeing what it is. I was really excited for this one because, one, it looks just about the same as some of my favorite cars. And this one right here, this one sits right in there. It's gonna need some upgrades. It's gonna need some modifications to get these kinks worked out, but I really think the car is worth it when it comes to that. Out of the box is one thing, but what can we do with it? That's the cool part. If you guys have any ideas on what to do, please feel free to leave it in the comments down below and help others along the way. Hey guys, I'm AJ with AJ Jam Studios saying, keep bashing, guys.